Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. So I just want to say it's such an honor to be here with all of you on this beautiful spring Sunday with the idea of growth and renewal is the concept for today's sermon. And when Mavis called me a few weeks ago and she proposed this idea, I was delighted and humbled that she asked me to speak, as it's just an absolute joy for me to share this message that I'm about to give with all of you. So without further ado, I wanted to kind of give you a little idea of who I am and how I got here, a little bit more back behind the scenes, shall you say. So my name is Jillian Speece, and I was born in the Midwest in a town called South Bend, Indiana. And I was raised by two very loving parents, and I have a sister named Jackie. And I remember growing up in the Midwest, some of the things that I spent a lot of my early time doing was I would always sing. I would find myself outside, oftentimes alone because there weren't a lot of kids where I grew up, and I'd be writing songs and I'd be sitting under oak trees and kind of entertaining myself for many hours, and I'd just be out in nature, and I found a lot of peace in that. And as I grew up, I always had a heart for helping, for service, and sometimes it wouldn't always go as I would imagine in my head. So being like a 6-year-old, I'd always want to help my mom and dad. Oh, can I help you with that, or can I do the dishes, or can I do whatever it was? And sometimes it would go terribly wrong, where I would offer to help and I'd like break something, or I was pretty clumsy as a kid. But I just continued to offer help, and I kind of got named in my family the helper. And so I grew up Catholic, and so I have a rich spiritual upbringing, which kind of led me on a path in my life of exploration. So I think when you are born as a cradle Catholic, someone who's deeply spiritual, you have questions. And I went on a journey starting when I was a teenager to find answers, which kind of led me all the way around into so many different beautiful religions and faiths, and understanding diversity within each other and respecting each other. And on the other side of that, I still deeply love Christ, and he has really inspired me throughout my journey. So that gives you a little bit of behind the scenes on who I am and where I came from. And I want to tell you a story today about kind of the idea behind help, wanting me wanting to help people and help heal people, and also leading into what Mavis mentioned earlier about this idea of the Unity Collective, which many of you have no idea what that is, and I'm really excited to share that. So the first story I want to talk about is, when I was a little girl, I always wanted to be an artist. I would sing songs, I would make up songs all day long. I was a very shy girl. The fact that I'm on stage right now is just kind of a miracle, because as growing up, I was terrified to get behind a microphone, and I was so shy that I would shake if I had to sing in front of people, and my parents would always invite me to sing in front of family and things like that, because they said, oh, you have such a great voice, and I didn't think I had a great voice. And they're like, just sing a little song, and they would like force me, which I'm actually very pleased about now, because that's how I'm able to talk to you right now without any terror. But so I wanted to be an artist, and my grandmother, her name was Joyce, she was an incredible light force on this planet. She was one of the most incredible human beings I've ever met. Not just because she was my grandma, but because of the amount of people that she helped. And she was an artist. She would spend most of her time painting and teaching kids how to paint, and she was just this bright, wonderful woman. And so I spent a lot of time with her, and she inspired me deeply. She had 10 children. My mom is one of 10, a good Midwestern Catholic family. And I remember spending like almost many days after school just painting with her, and she would teach me all these amazing lessons, and she would bestow wisdom upon me about life and how to treat people and how to love people, especially people who are different than we are. And she'd teach it through art. So I was always inspired by art, and I always wanted to be an artist. And I remember being 11 years old, and my mom sat my sister and I down and said, hey, I have some unfortunate news. Grandma Joyce, she was just diagnosed with cancer. And being a child, you don't know exactly what that is, but you know that it's not a good thing because just like the tone of the voice and stuff. And we're like, what does this mean, Mom? And she was just like, well, she said, Grandma's going to try and beat this. She's going to try everything she can, but there's no guarantees. And to help her, we're going to move her into our house. So being 11, we went from like having slumber parties and from, having a pretty, I would say, normal life, my sister and I and our family, to having my grandma live with us, which was very exciting to have her be with us. But what I learned at a very young age is cancer is a very aggressive and really scary life journey for someone to go on. And so when she moved in, everything changed. Our world kind of flipped upside down. And of course, the helper inside of me still wanted to help. So I'd get home from school and I'd ask my mom, how can I help? And she'd, give me this task. Or I remember Grandma was doing chemotherapy. And so it was very, she needed a lot of nutrients and things. So he'd help make smoothies, or I'd sometimes just snuggle with her. I'd jump in bed, or I'd paint with her in bed. And we would have these really rich moments. So many months passed, and I recall just this incredible feeling of, I kind of had sensed this point that we were going to lose her. And it was every day on our doorstep. So this idea of death was always with us. And I'd come home from school and you could just see that she just wasn't doing, it was a really rough day. Chemo was really difficult that day. So I'd jump in bed, I'd talk to her, and then months passed, and I was in my finest black dress, and I was laying a rose on her casket with my 28 cousins, and we have so much family, and it was one of the hardest days of my life. And I just turned 12. So I remember thinking, wow, this is pretty brutal. One of my favorite people in the universe is gone. And this idea of death that we had been kind of living within for so many months was just so interesting, because when death is with you every day, you're thinking about your life. You're thinking about, what am I doing on earth to make a difference? You're thinking about her life. You're talking to her about, what did she do? And she came to this really beautiful place of peace on her deathbed. And in the process of death, another thing that I saw happen was there was a lot of letting go. And some people in death, because I've seen this a few times now, I'm 31, and I've lost a few people and have been there with them. Some people really fight the process of letting go, and that can make it more painful for the person. And I think my grandma really handled it with a lot of grace, because every day she would let go of things with this beautiful smile, and she says, I have a lot of peace around this. I know that I'm going to be reunited with a lot of my loved ones. And so she was giving away things, and she was saying goodbye to people, and she was saying goodbye to us. And she was so thoughtful that she would always do these really amazing things where she would create beautiful pieces of art, and she would do it over a long period of time and give a special piece of art to every single person. And this took her a while to do, but that's something that I just always admired about her, and she always encouraged me to become an artist. And so the significance of this story with today in the idea of growth and renewal is that I saw her grow so much through letting go of so many things in those quiet moments day to day. And through her letting go, I realized that the strength in growth, in jumping into these great uncertainty, is that we have to remind ourselves that the beauty of that is letting go of things not only that aren't serving us anymore, but of letting go of things that you can't take with you. So I just was always inspired by her, and I wanted to start with the concept of reflecting on death, because life is so short. And I think about this all the time. Being an independent musician, my husband Nathaniel and I, we find ourselves traveling all over the world, and we are faced with many situations where we're like, oh wow, we definitely could have died there. Like, we've been seriously. Like, we've been on the road before where we're driving, 80 miles an hour, and I'll never forget this. We were driving, and there was a car that came off of this ramp, and so we got all the way over into the left lane, and this car just spun out in front of us, going 80 miles an hour, and just missed us by like a fraction. He swerved our car out into the other lane by, a fraction of a second. And so that's just one very small story of what we face as musicians all the time. So we're constantly bombarded with this idea of death and life and growth and renewal and jumping into uncertainty and jumping into things that are unknown that are very scary. And from the day that my grandma died, if you fast forward 15 years, I moved from Indiana to New York City. I had just gotten married to the love of my life, my high school sweetheart, Nathaniel. And we moved to a city, New York, that we knew no one in the city. And we moved to Brooklyn, and we were living in a 600 square feet apartment. We shared it with a few mice. They didn't pay rent, but unfortunately, we had to kick them out after a while. But so it was this very humble beginning, and I remember moving to New York City, being absolutely excited and exhilarated and completely terrified. Talk about growth. We didn't know anyone. We didn't know what we were doing. We're independent musicians. We don't make a lot of money. What are we doing here? Rent is like $3,000 a month for 600 square feet. It didn't make any sense, but we were called to go, so we went. And oftentimes in our life, we're called to go places that we're uncomfortable going. And sometimes we're called for a long time to go somewhere, and we continue to say, okay, I hear you, but I don't really want to do that. Very persistent, this one. Very persistent. So we moved to New York City. Things are rough. I remember within the first month of living there, I was hanging a curtain up. It was like an IKEA curtain that we had gotten because that's what we could afford. And I was hanging it up, and it kept falling. The rod was falling, and the third time it fell, it just cut my hand wide open. And I just remember being like, that's it. I've had enough of this place already. It costs $12 to do a bucket of laundry. There's people that are always huffing and puffing on the street. The curtain's cutting my hand. We can barely afford to live here. What the heck are we doing here? We don't know anyone. It felt very isolating, And in those moments, continuing to listen to God and say, no, I have a plan for you, and being like, really, is this really the plan? I thought you said in the Bible that you had plans for us to grow and to have abundance, not to struggle. I'm like, this doesn't look like that. And I just remember thinking, okay, I'm going to trust you. This is very difficult. And every day I grew a little bit more. And I would often think back to my grandma in New York, because when I was 9 years old, a couple of years before she got cancer, she gave me a butterfly ring. And the butterfly ring symbolized metamorphosis. And so oftentimes I would wear that ring, and I'd look down on my finger for strength, and I'd say, okay, all right, this is just the part where I'm going into the cocoon. And I can't see the other side, but I know that my wings will come out on the other side at some point, and this takes a long time, and I'm impatient. And so we're sitting at our kitchen table in Brooklyn, New York, on this scrappy little, it was like a little tin kitchen table we got for $30. And we're looking at each other. And my husband looks at me, and he tells me some unfortunate news. He says, Jillian, he said, my grandpa's not doing well. I think we need to go home for the weekend and possibly say goodbye. I was like, what? Because he had just recently lost his grandma, and his grandparents had been married for 45 years. So long story short, we drive to South Bend, Indiana, and the day before the funeral, he has this divine inspiration pour through him. And essentially, we think the Spirit gave him this idea, and the idea was this. You need to go immediately out into America. You need to spread a message of unity and love through your music. And you need to go on a 50-state journey in 2016 during the election period. And you need to do this like now. So we were like, what? This has never happened before. It came so clear, and it was so aggressive. So So in 2016, we packed up 2 backpacks, a guitar, a keyboard, and a bag of merchandise to help us get from place to place. And we left New York City, subletted our apartment out for what we thought was going to be a few months, which ended up being 8 months. And we toured all 50 states of America. We performed over 264 shows in all 50 states in over 200 cities, spreading a message of unity, love, and radical inclusivity to every human that we met on the road. And after every single performance, we invited everyone to sign their message of unity on what is now known as the Unity car. So it was a station wagon that was deemed worthless. It was, for parts, it would have been like $700 to sell it. But what we did is we turned it into a mobile art piece that went from town to town, state to state, city to city, spreading a message of positivity and hope in a very aggressive year, a very divisive year, a very dividing year, and reminding all humans that we are more united than we are divided through music, community, and collaboration. And this journey not only lifted us up, but it did break us down in so many levels. Every day we had to find a new place to stay, and we didn't know where, we couldn't see the end of it, and it took us over 8 months to do this. And in the theme of today of growth and renewal, I want to kind of wrap this up because I think I only have 4 minutes left. Great. Perfect. You're teeing me up, babe. You're teeing me up. So if you can imagine, every day you're relying essentially on the divine to guide you to where you need to go next. We had a lot of shows booked, but they were constantly being booked in real time. And the people we were meeting were incredible from all over the world, signing these beautiful messages of unity and using their voices for good. And what we learned from this is that every individual on this planet, we have a lot of power inside of us. This is a power that we take for granted, and this is a power that we oftentimes give away unconsciously. We learned that by giving people a tool to use their voice for good, that people are intrinsically good, and it makes a lot of sense to be together and to be unified. And we need to remember that every single one of us here, instead of giving our power away to, let's say, a politician or maybe an organization, something that might be good, but also might be just taking a lot of power away from us as individuals acting on our own street and doing good things in our community, that we can actually make the greatest difference when we remember how much power we have. So one of my favorite things is that I believe that we are part of God. So God created us in God's likeness and image, which means that we have this incredible power to create, re-choose, and recreate our path. And this is something that I hold so dear, because when we remember what we are made of, when we remember what we are capable of, we can take back the power and do really beautiful, incredible things with this planet. We can literally reshape the earth if we all bind together and use all of our individual talents for the power and of good and for making peace on earth. And every moment we have the opportunity to re-choose. So if you do make a decision that is, maybe not in your best interest or it's not serving you well, you have every moment to re-choose to make a better choice. So in closing, I want to say this. I want to say that the Unity Collective taught me not only that humans are so kind and so good, and the news does no justice to how incredible the planet is and how incredible the people are, that we can literally change and reshape our future and that we hold the power. But it also taught me this very, very important message, that it all begins with love, and love gives itself away. And when there is one candle lit, it can completely eradicate darkness. But when you take that one candle and then you light another candle off that candle, it does not diminish the light off of that one candle. It makes the world brighter and brighter, so that this idea between abundance and scarcity, there's only abundance in love. Love continues to replicate, it continues to grow, it continues to transform, and that when you see someone who's having a problem, reach out to them with your candle and offer them to light their candle off of your candle. Thank you so much.